Picture this. It's June 19th, 1944. A massive Japanese naval force is steaming towards the Mariana Islands. They're absolutely convinced they're about to land a decisive, war-winning blow against the American fleet. And why wouldn't they be? They're flying the legendary Mitsubishi Zero, piloted by men who truly believe in its supremacy.
But here's the thing. What they were actually flying into wasn't a battle. It was a perfectly engineered slaughter. An ambush set not just by guns and planes, but by technology, industry, and a radical new way of waging war. This is the story of how an icon of air power was systematically annihilated in a single day, and how a whole new kind of warfare was born from its ashes.
So, to really get the sheer shock of what happened, you first have to understand the legend of the Mitsubishi A6M Zero. For the first few years of the war, this plane wasn't just another fighter. It was a symbol, a terrifying symbol of Japanese martial prowess. You see, the Zero was a masterpiece, but it was designed with one thing in mind: agility. It could outturn literally anything the Allies could put in the sky, and the entire Japanese naval doctrine was built around this single advantage. Their pilots were this elite corps of extensively trained veterans who had just dominated the skies from Pearl Harbor all the way to the Dutch East Indies. They had this incredible psychological edge because, for years, they were simply better. So on that morning, Japan's objective was crystal clear: use their superior pilots and their superior tactics to land a knockout punch. They thought they were facing a more or less comparable force. The reality, though, well, it was a little different. The Americans had put together Task Force 58, this massive flotilla of 15 carriers, including the new Essex-class giants. It was the single most powerful naval force ever put to sea, and it was carrying a brand new weapon. See, the Americans hadn't just been building more planes, they had been studying their enemy, and they were building a very, very specific solution. And this is it, the Grumman F6F Hellcat. Now, this plane wasn't designed to be the best fighter in the world in every single category. No, it was designed with one single, brutal purpose: to kill Zeros. Grumman engineers and analyzed captured Zeros. They debriefed every pilot who survived an encounter, and they engineered a plane to exploit every single one of the Zero's weaknesses. And this is where the philosophy was just so different. The Zero was lightweight, it was a dancer. The Hellcat, it was a heavyweight brawler. It had over 200 pounds of armor plate just protecting the pilot. It had self-sealing fuel tanks. Its airframe was so tough it could absorb an incredible amount of punishment and just keep on flying. And instead of finesse, it brought brute force, a 2,000 horsepower engine and 6.50 caliber machine guns that fired this devastating stream of armor-piercing incendiary rounds. So here's the crucial point. This battle wasn't just about two planes facing off. No way. It was a clash of entire industrial and tactical systems. It was a duel between an artisan's approach to war and an assembly line of pure destruction. I mean, just look at these specs side by side. The difference is just staggering. The Hellcat had nearly double the horsepower, but look at those bottom two rows: armor and pilot protection. The Hellcat had it in spades. The Zero had absolutely none. A single well-placed burst could turn a Zero into a fireball, while Hellcat pilots were reporting taking dozens of hits and still making it back to their carrier. And this imbalance, it went way beyond the machines. It was about the men flying them, too. You see, Japan's elite veteran pilots from the early war, they were mostly gone. Their replacements were rushed through training, sometimes with less than 100 hours in the air. On the other hand, America's industrial might wasn't just building planes. It was mass-producing experienced pilots. The average U.S. Navy pilot had over 500 hours of flight time, with tons of gunnery and tactical training. And this was the final nail in the coffin. The American carriers had advanced radar. They picked up the incoming Japanese waves at 150 miles out. So this wasn't a reactive scramble anymore. You had fighter director officers in the Combat Information Center acting like air traffic controllers in reverse, just calmly vectoring the Hellcats to the perfect altitude, the perfect position to ambush the Japanese. The Zeros were flying into a fight that was already lost before they even laid eyes on an enemy plane. So with all these pieces in place, the plane, the pilot, the system, the stage was set for one of the most one-sided battles in all of military history. For pilots like Ensign Tanaka, a recent graduate with just 75 hours of flight time, the reality was a complete nightmare. He saw Hellcats just diving on them out of the sun. He tried to turn to force that classic dogfight the Zero was built for, but the Hellcat just followed. Its superior power made it surprisingly agile at high speed.
And then a burst of .50 caliber rounds, and his plane simply disintegrated. The psychological impact on the Japanese pilots was just profound. Their invincible fighter was being swatted from the sky like it was nothing. The numbers from that first engagement are just breathtaking. The first wave of Japanese attackers lost 12 planes in the opening 8 minutes of combat. The slaughter had begun. And this sheer lethality is perfectly captured by pilots like Lieutenant Alexander Vrashew. He shot down 6 enemy bombers in just 8 minutes, using only 360 rounds of ammunition. That's an average of 60 bullets. We're talking less than a 2-second burst per kill. The combination of that stable gun platform, the superior gun sight, and all that training was just overwhelming. The Americans had a simple rule: never, ever get into a low-speed turning fight with a Zero. Don't play their game. Instead, they used the Hellcat's power and weight to their advantage. They would dive from high altitude, that's the boom, fire a devastating burst, and then use their speed to climb right back up to safety, the zoom. This energy-based tactic made the Zero's main advantage, its maneuverability, completely and totally irrelevant. The strategic impact of this single day of fighting was staggering. By sundown, the battle wasn't just a loss for Japan, it was an annihilation, an irrecoverable defeat. In a single day, Japan lost nearly 400 carrier aircraft, plus another 50 from land bases. The air groups that Admiral Ozawa had brought into battle, the very core of his naval air power, had just ceased to exist. American pilots, hearing the reports of these lopsided victories, started calling it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. And yeah, the name stuck. The material losses were staggering, but the human cost for Japan was so much worse. The Americans lost only 43 planes in combat. Japan lost over 400 pilots. Now, this wasn't just about replacing men. It was about replacing knowledge. They lost the last of their pre-war veterans and their experienced flight instructors. The institutional knowledge of Japanese naval aviation was effectively wiped out in a matter of hours. And ultimately, this slide right here explains why the defeat was so absolute, so irrecoverable. In 1944 alone, the United States produced over 96,000 aircraft. Japan, with its entire economy mobilized for war, managed 28,000. America could absorb its losses and come back even stronger. For Japan, every single loss was a permanent step towards defeat. The Turkey Shoot wasn't the cause of Japan's defeat, it was the brutal, undeniable proof of it. This battle really proved that modern warfare had changed. It was no longer just about the warrior spirit or some tactical genius. It was about systems, logistics, and industrial production. And it leaves us with this stark question. In the face of such overwhelming material and technological superiority, what does individual bravery even mean? It's a question that echoes from the skies over the Marianas all the way to the battlefields of today.